So the next topic is functional behavior assessments. So this is the process of data collection around the problematic behaviors. So according to New York State and the Part 200 regulations, functional behavior assessment means the process of determining why a student engages in behaviors that impede learning and how the student's behavior relates to the environment. So FBA is for all students. So completing an FBA does not mean that you must make an initial referral to CSE. So there aren't any regulations for FBAs for general education students. So we follow the Part 200 regulations for all students. So when should a functional assessment be requested? Well, if there's starting to be an increase in behavior referrals, maybe detention, if a student's grades are starting to drop, maybe there's more in-school suspensions or out-of-school suspensions. So it's when a student's behavior is impeding learning despite consistently implemented general school-wide or classroom-wide interventions. An FBA should be done if the student's behavior places the student or others at risk of harm or injury. If there's some distracting behavior going on, maybe the child doesn't want to go to school anymore. There may be some school avoidance issues. An FBA should also be conducted if the Committee on Special Education team is considering a more restrictive placement as a result of a student's behavior. So to get the process started, the school will need parental consent. So the school is going to send a parent paperwork to sign to give the school permission to start the FBA. For students with disabilities, results are then shared with the Committee on Special Education, and if needed, the IEP is updated. So an FBA is considered a reevaluation. It's updated only during the triennial evaluations or if the student exhibits new behaviors. Okay, I know there's a lot of information here. I want you to use this as a reference. So what should the FBA be based on? It should be based on multiple sources of data, included but not limited to information obtained from direct observation of the student, information from the student's teacher, and or related service providers, a review of available data and information from the student's record, and other sources including any relevant information provided by the student's parent. The FBA shall not be based solely on the student's history of presenting problem behaviors. So educators are looking at where the problem behavior is occurring and also where is the behavior not occurring. So once all of the data is collected, there's observations, input from providers, input from parents, and also don't forget input from the student. A meeting will occur. So you're going to discuss the strengths of the student, the challenges, what are the clues that you've gleaned from observations and evaluations, and then you're going to select one or two of the most problematic behaviors if there are a number of them. So you're really going to just pick the top one or two. You're going to develop a hypothesis, kind of an educated guess on the function of the behavior, and then you're going to develop some positive strategies to try and replace those behaviors. And you're also going to select a date to reconvene, so see if the plan is actually working. So what must an FBA provide? The FBA should provide a baseline of the student's problem behaviors across activities, settings, people, and times of day. So you're identifying what the problem behavior is. So it may be calling out answers, it may be hitting other students, it could be throwing materials, maybe shutting down during instruction, getting out of the seat during instruction. So whatever the behavior is, you're identifying what specifically the problem behavior is. You're looking at the frequency, so that's the number of times the behavior occurs during an observation period. So for example, how many times did Joey get out of his seat during instruction. We're looking at the duration. So the amount of time the behavior lasts from start to finish. So how long is Joey out of his seat? We're looking at the intensity. So that's defined as the amount of force, energy, and or exertion involved. So for example, if a behavior is described as punching another student, you want to know, the amount of force resulting. Did it result in a red mark? Was it an open hand? Was it a closed fist? You want to know about the intensity of that behavior. So here's an example of some data collection. So this is duration recording for tantrum behavior for Johnny, and they've defined tantrum behavior as any flopping on the ground with loud vocalizations with or without tears. So here we've got the date, so October 17th, 18th, and 19th. So on the 17th, the tantrum behavior started at 9:07, it ended at 9:10, and it lasted for about 3 minutes. And then we see it happen during math time. But what we don't have a good handle on is the intensity. They've done a little bit here as far as identifying what the tantrum looks like, but we don't know, is he hitting his head? Is he just arms and legs flailing? When he's flopping on the ground, what's actually happening? What does that look like? And also during the comments here, it says it's happening during math time. Well, is it the beginning of math time during instruction? Is it during time when students are required to work independently on worksheets? So you want some more specifics about, what's going on in the classroom while this behavior is happening. Here's another example of a data sheet. So again, we have the interfering behavior is hitting. Again, we don't have that defined. Is it open fist? Is it closed fist? Is it hitting a person? Is it hitting a desk? We don't know. So what we have here is the time the behavior occurred. We've got 9:15, and we've got a behavior rating system, and here the teacher has indicated it's at a 4, which they've designated as very severe, intense, or dangerous. But again, we don't necessarily have parameters around what that looks like. Then we see here it started up at 10:05 and then at 10:23. But what we also don't know is how long did the behavior last? Did it last from 9:15 to 10:05, or was it, one hit to a desk at 9:15 and then nothing till 10:05? So again, we really need some more specific information. So FBAs look beyond the behavior itself and focus on identifying significant factors. So if we look out this window, we see the grass, but not necessarily the trees. We see behaviors, but we need to be curious about what might be an underlying factor to create the behaviors. So we want to know what's back there behind those trees. We need to figure out, what does the student actually need? So are the factors involved social, sensory, physical, other cognitive, or environmental factors that we need to be looking at? When conducting an FBA, we need to define the problem behavior in measurable and observable terms. So what does that mean? We need to be able to observe the behavior happening and also measure it and also be able to count it. So we need to make it concrete and defined so clearly that a person that's unfamiliar with the student could recognize the behavior without any doubts. So let's take a look at this example. Jeff is disruptive in class. So for Jeff, what does disruptive mean? If that's all we have to go by, we really don't know. So it could mean that Jeff calls out during instruction. It could mean he gets out of his seat. Maybe he initiates conversation with peers during instruction. Maybe he throws paper at peers during instruction. Maybe he throws books on the floor during instruction. We really don't know. It's not clear. So we need to have those concrete, measurable, and observable. So again, so that we've got a good FBA that we can then look at replacing those problematic behaviors. So congratulations, you have completed topic 2. So keep going.